or
I am.
I didn't have
Small,
arrows.
tiny, 0.
oh,
I just had small, tiny 0. How good is that?
yeah.
Comms are strong.
I didn't understand what you said, so I just bowed.
Oh.
Oh, this is good.
Off. Everyone off. I said pass.
Oh no! Oh my god, I bowed.
Oh my god.
On. I'm on.
Wait, on?
Okay, I'm on.
Wait, hello?
I'm hitting
Oh
this.
my god.
Bro, there's no way. These are the
Everyone
comms.
Oh, Yuki! Hello? Hello? What?
Oh, bro. That's so tragic.
Good morning. In today's episode, we're going to take a look at the new proposed prayers called Ruinous Powers that were recently released on the beta worlds, which are basically playtesting worlds for the community to try out major updates before Jagex accidentally put something stupid into the official servers. None of the upcoming gameplay is certain to make it to the main game, as everything you're about to see is yet subject to change. There are also some new items that I'll talk about more later. Alright, with that out of the way, in this video I'm going to take you through a raid that we did on the second day of beta testing. Afterwards, I'll give my opinion, some ideas and suggestions on this whole update. Okay, so in order to make a bit more sense of what you're seeing here, especially for those who have lived under a rock and this is their first time seeing the prayers in gear, we're using Virtus, which is basically Ancestral on crack, but only for ancient spells. We also have a new staff replacing Kodai with slightly worse damage, but a much longer freeze duration. This allows us to do some crazy things at Maiden. As you may notice, we dints early on 2 people to remove basically all the 70s before 50s even proc. Due to the prayers, we're dealing a lot more damage so we don't actually lose the 12-second 50s proc that we're looking for, letting us stack whatever is left of the old 70s. We then also have enough damage to push for another 12-second proc, which was previously improbable. This means we're stacking 30s on 50s, but much faster than we normally would. In fact, it's so fast that the 30s stack on whatever is left of the 70s. In fact, there is so much damage that along with the additional freeze time for 50s, we can actually skip both 50s and 30s with no leak from the triple stacked 70s. This is insane. Well, a 1-minute Maiden takes us to bloat, and just for fun I'm pulling up the pace chart from my other 5's videos. In the meantime, you'll see me locate our orb down to low health. I need to be low health to abuse the Vindication Prayer, Redemption on steroids. Once the Redemption effect procs, your next attack will deal extra damage. I haven't done it much yet, so it looks a bit clumsy here, but while missing so many ticks, we get the 1 down very easily. In later runs I also bring more prayer into the raid to be able to keep going for longer, as bloat, obviously, takes more than 4 attacks to die. I know I'm only meant to give opinions afterwards, but this needs to be removed ASAP. It's not fun, it's not interesting, it's not skillful gameplay, it's stupid, tedious, and makes me want to stop playing. More on that later though. Aside from Vindication, let's talk about this entry.
my god,
I've never seen something like this. 143. Like, the best I've ever had in 19,000 attempts is a 148, which was on a 1 down with the current official Maiden rec. I think you might start to get a sense of where this is all going. Well, for now it's going to Nilo. The waves are hardly any different from the main game. There's slight power creep, so our hits are a tiny bit more accurate and our max hits higher, giving us better odds at one-shotting crabs. But at the end of the day, the idea of the room remains the same. I guess this is a good time to talk about the prayer some more. We have similar offensive prayers to Piety, Rigor and Augury. However, these new prayers give slightly better offensive stats while giving 0 defensive stats. Additionally, we have 4 vows, of which only 3 are useful and only in specific scenarios. During the waves, I'm using Glacey's vow, which has a small chance to deal some extra chip damage each attack. This damage is magical, so other roles can't use it for waves. During the boss we also can't use it, besides on mage phases, but for now the prayers are too confusing to bother with this yet. Instead we're camping Umbra's Vow. Umbra's Vow reduces up to 15% defense based on a fraction of your damage. It can go no lower than minus 15%, but for now this is the only vow that has any use on the Nilo boss. I think it's likely with the new prayer buff that we'll eventually see a new Waves world record, simply because of these better one-shotting odds. It won't be by much however due to the nature of Waves, but I'm excited to finally see it get beaten. It's technically already possible in the main game, but it just requires really stupid RNG on top of impeccable gameplay. These two factors unfortunately don't often collide. The boss however is a whole other beast. With the new prayer book being, well, new, it's really difficult to find the correct prayers. After 2 days of practice, I only managed to keep up with the boss like half the time. Still, while playing like a monkey, we get insanely good bosses. This is how strong the prayers are. Once this gets optimized, I don't even know what to expect. By now I have to mention that we're running quote-unquote money 1-5s with Maiden and Versic god booking. This means no SOD tech, no spellbook swapping on the mages, no rune trading, and as such very little venges and thralls. These are test runs after all, and we're not nearly comfortable enough with the prayers to actually run any serious resets. Therefore this is a normal SOD with a normal mace and BG as backups, which is terrible. Another thing to mention is that the protection prayers on this book are less protective. These prayers only protect for 90% of incoming damage, and while taking some damage, you also reflect some of this damage back to the attacker. Because of this, most of us have been using a Blood Fury during testing. Blood Fury, however, does lose us a max hit and some specking accuracy, so in the future we might want to figure out a way to use Torture, or we might have to accept the minor DPS loss and take the win the prayer book offers. The only advantage that we have right now are the new prayers. And this is a perfect opportunity to mention another prayer we've been using here and there, Gambit. Gambit is an overhead prayer that simply increases accuracy by 8% when turned on. This means we basically have to flick it on anything that has more than 0 defense. It's also very useful for initial specs on bosses that do go to 0 defense. Although the P2 Red's gameplay is a bit annoying, I actually quite like this prayer for the additional gameplay that it provides. Obviously, with all these offensive buffs, we're bound to destroy Sodrek. But since we're not doing the Sod Maze stall yet, nor have Thrall Venge on all 5 players, but rather 1 Venger and 2 Thrallers and 2 backup BGSers, this isn't a super impressive Sod time. To be honest, keeping those factors in mind, this is actually a really good Sod. Next up we get the Zarpus, and this is one of the most affected rooms due to a vow that I haven't talked about yet, Fumus's Vow. Fumus's Vow consumes 10% of the poison status that you're afflicted by and reflects it as damage. This effect procs per attack. If that sounds a bit confusing, I was the same. Long story short, let's say you're poisoned. With each attack you lower your own poison status and deal damage based on how badly you were poisoned. This prayer has led to some game-breaking clips and is currently abusable to one-shot bosses like Nex and Maiden, and also players in PvP. This'll obviously get fixed, so we didn't use this, let's say, bug, but we did use it the way it was originally intended. By poisoning ourselves on Zarpus' poison splats, we can reflect some of it back to him, and then reapply our poison by stepping into more of it. Kind of crazy and definitely not sustainable without a Blood Fury, but this is a pretty cool risk-reward kind of gameplay. It's also very strong against Zarpus, and we've repeatedly broken the world record without even gold booking for ZCBs. And look at that pace, with a Sod like this, I'm terrified. Anyway, we do our standard 5's P1 method with the gold books and the rings, and I'm not gonna go too in depth, but I do want to mention that LAKEY's Vow is really good during P1 for additional chip damage. It strongly supports our method to regen more spec to get more claw specs during P2, which we use to go for 1-down P2 Reds. With the additional damage, as well as more likely good P1s, our 1-down Reds probability is skyrocketing due to this prayer book. Versic P1 does start with 20 defense, so having Gambit on while she's not attacking is ideal, however scary it may be. Additionally, she already maxed a 68 through prayer on the normal prayer book, but with these deflection prayers, that number goes up to 75 through prayer. This means P1 is way more terrifying than before. At least it's a bit faster. No, that doesn't really make me feel any better. Terrifying. On P2, we can camp Gambit until Red's proc, so nothing about P2 changes until then, except our damage and prayer drain. I haven't mentioned it before, but this prayer book drains the f*** out of your prayer points. Especially when you're using an overhead, an offensive prayer, and a vow, it feels like you're almost using double the normal prayer drain. It actually messes with my head because I'm so used to when I have to pot that I often forget to pay attention to it. This is especially the case in high focus rooms like Nilo Waves, Soat, and Verzik, where I'll be busy looking for crabs or orbs or just generally intense gameplay. It feels weird being caught off guard by the game again, but don't think I'm a hater, I just wanted to mention it. We're about to head into P2 Reds, and from there on it becomes pretty intense. We want to have Gambit active for most of our swings, but we also want to have Mage Prey against her targeted Mage autos, so we have to flick Mage Prey on the same tick as the step back, and then have to go back to Gambit for maximum Gambit uptime. I haven't done it enough to be tick perfect on everything, but this will be optimized quite soon. Right now, I'm just struggling with old habits that don't work the same with the pace and mechanics of these new runs. Take those claw specs for example. I should do them on the end of a cycle, not at the start, because that would make it far easier to get the claw specs off with Gambit active. We've just hardly done any theory crafting so far, and instead we've been potting as much as possible to enjoy and learn how to use the new prayers. We don't get the one down here, but I'll show you a Verzik after this run that will blow your mind. For P3, it's just about the same story. We want to have Gambit active for the majority of our hits between praying against her autos. I briefly talked about it during SOT, but I want to reiterate that we don't have 5 people on Lunar Spellbook Swap here. The amount of Venge damage we're missing out on during our raids is quite significant, and P3 Verzik is usually one of the most Venge heavy parts of the raid. Only 2 Venges go off during this entire P3, while it's usually between 12 and 15. Additionally, I want to talk about one final prayer, Rebuke. Rebuke is a prayer that amplifies damage taken and reflects 15% of that damage back to the opponent. Venging with Rebuke is going to be cracked, and I'm very eager to see what we can do with that combination. Alright, time to wrap up this raid. It's alright, we got a casual 1205, no big deal, on a 145 SOT. Not only that, but we did another raid right after and we got a similar time. We actually beat main game rec in back-to-back halfway money raids. And you can just see me sat there not sure what to think of it. This is insane, dude.
Bro, we just beat Rec back to back.
And yes,
Yeah,
that's me.
that's-
Hi, YouTube face reveal.
Thank you.
I stream most YouTube content on Twitch, so if you care, feel free to stop by.
Oh, wait!
Get us
Charlie,
north.
Charlie here?
North,
Yeah,
get
Charlie
up
here?
north.
I don't have
Charlie?
Oh, Bucky! What the
Let's go! A
fuck?
north kill, what the hell?
Oh.
And that's not even the Verzik I wanted to talk about, that's this one. I'm just gonna let this Verzik play because I don't think I need to add anything here. In the meantime, I'll talk about my first impression. Well, as with all first impressions, we have to consider how it looks. I think it looks alright. The prayer book is too dynamic for my liking, and all the icons seem to kind of blend together, as they appear closer to each other and have a lot more contrast going on. This makes it visually unappealing, and I'd rather see the prayer book's graphics reworked. Secondly, I can't find any of the prayers right now. They are ordered by level up, which unfortunately puts prayers that are often used together far apart from each other. There is no logical structure to the book for gameplay purposes, and there is currently no way to reorder the prayers manually. The filter options don't offer a good solution either. Because this is beta testing, I'm not holding any game-breaking mechanics or bugs against the design, so I won't bash too much on the Fumus' Vow one-shotting, since that will obviously be removed, but rather I would like to point out the problems which aren't inherently game-breaking. As for the gameplay, I think Jagex did a relatively good job on the first version of this prayer book's testing phase. It has a high-risk, high-reward theme, and these prayers definitely give off that vibe. However, I do think some rebalancing is in order. This version is looking alright.
I'm
looking-
hitting really
It's looking good, yeah.
Yeah,
If we get a 1 down here, it's sub 3.
Yeah, probably.
I'm
Oh, it's
5
gonna be
ticking.
deep.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Okay, steep. Mage play.
It's 1 down.
Oh yeah. I don't even have claw yet.
Not even on a Charlie.
oh my god.
This is insane.
No way.
This is insane.
Alright, 700 XP drop side.
My fucking god.
Claw if you
Falling
have.
east.
Yeah.
I'm flank
What
north.
is this versic, dude?
Oh, look at the time.
Look at the time.
Charlie.
Clawed 1k. Kill. Oh my god!
There it is.
Right.
There it is, bro. Wait, it's not even a wreck.
So close. Oh my god. 254.
So, let's get into the nitty gritty here, and let me start with my opinion on the new gear. The gear I don't really care much for or about. It's just a little bit of niche power creep, which I don't particularly hate. A game needs to have at least some power creep, kind of like the economy needs a little bit of inflation. I do think the Eye Scepter might be on the somewhat broken side, but we're trading off 10% damage versus the Kodai, so I'm not sure if I hate or like it. Let's call it neutral there. Next, let me give my opinion on the most key prayers on the book. Let me start with the good stuff. I like, for example, that the offensive prayers are only slightly stronger offensively, but completely lack defensive buffs as a trade-off. I'm in love with Rebuke, not because it's super strong, but because it really gives off this risk-reward vibe that comes with additional mechanics of being an overhead to top it off. That's interesting. What's not interesting is simply extra chip damage for additional prayer drain. I'm thinking Glacey's Vow here. That's boring power creep. Now what's irritating is chip damage through prayer. Playing well should always be rewarded, and there is a big reason lots of people despise Nex, besides the GP per hour, and TOA's Quiet Prayers invocation, which got one of the worst Reddit outbursts I've recently seen. Not to side with Reddit here, but I'd rather see the deflection prayers reworked to protect for full damage, but for example amplify all other incoming damage. Then you could kind of skill your way out of a situation rather than brew your way out of it. I do like Fumus's Vow the way I think it was intended, to reflect poison against enemies that poison you. This would encourage you to get poisoned rather than bring an anti-poison, adding to this risk-reward flavor. Pretty interesting concept when it's not completely busted. Umbra's Vow is pretty cool too. This prayer is useless for the most part, but when you're min-maxing everything to the extreme, the additional defense drain from the first hit or two can really make a difference at a high skill level, as well as during more casual occasions when you aren't bothering with defense reduction special attacks. Kruger's Vow is by far the worst because it's totally useless in my opinion. It drains too much prayer for the tiny effect it gives, and this vow would have to be mega buffed for me to even consider clicking it. I also think it's kind of a boring idea, taking away from the risk-reward theme. I already talked about Gambit a little during SOT, and I won't go too much more in depth, but I do kind of like it. While at the same time it's pretty damn strong and forces super active, near tedious gameplay during heavy hitting boss fights. This one doesn't fall under small power creep, and along with the new gear and already stronger offensive prayers, I'm not sure if this is completely necessary. I'm neutral because I'm undecided. And to finish it all off, I want to figuratively dropkick whoever invented Vindication. Vindication must be changed. If not, the meta everywhere will always be to bring a locator orb and prayer pots and just kill yourself during fights. Redemption tick healing bosses where you take too much damage in order to do more damage. It's an unfun power boost method that will almost certainly make me quit the game if that becomes the meta. The first time you're seeing it, you may think, hey, that's pretty cool. But then when you start doing it, you realize it's simply a chore with very little skill required once you understand the cycle. And I've heard nobody who likes doing this method. I'd rather iron my hands than Vindication tick heal my own boss. Change it, put a cooldown on it and then buff it, nerf it somehow, or rather just get rid of it. I apologize for being somewhat aggressive on this one, but its existence worries me to frustration. And with that, we've come to the end of today's video. I hope you liked it. Share your thoughts on the prayers with me in the comments, or join our Discord and have a chat there. We usually respond pretty fast. Also let me know if you want more beta content, or if I should work on the trio overall record video next. I've had the footage since before the beta worlds opened, but found this a more pressing subject. Anyway, that's it, and as always, thanks for watching.